are these people?
Some of the Google Maps have come out about Gaza. And I don't know if you've seen these, but they're horrific. And I'm sorry to do this. This is what Biden officials, Assal Rad, called a limited operation in Rafah. The magnitude of their lies becomes clearer every day. I'm going to play this. This comes from UNRWA. This is drone footage. It's a minute 25 of overhead of Rafah. Now, there was another video that's circulating around that Assal had put up that has Matthew Miller, Count Smirkula, speaking over this, talking about how it would be a limited operation. This is... oh my God.
I mean, that's just miles of destruction. And those people returning, right?
Right. Remember that Biden said that they weren't going to do a full bombing into Rafah.
Yeah, they wouldn't carpet bomb. That's like Dresden is carpet bombing. Okay. You know, as Jesus enters on his donkey.
No cars, obviously. They bombed all the cars. All the vehicles are destroyed. Yeah. You had a cart with a horse. I can't even imagine the horse survived.
I don't even think that was a horse.
Might have been a donkey.
I think that was a donkey. Yeah.
UN vehicles bombed out. Buildings destroyed. Still got 15 more seconds of seeing this destruction. God. But I got, it gets worse. Amazingly enough.
I bet it does.
I got more. Here's the next thing. Google Earth has started to update its satellite images of Gaza, and the results are both devastating and undeniable. Shout out to My Name is Jennifer and Shit You Should Care About.
How long did that take you? You know, they've been avoiding doing that for a minute, I'm betting.
But wait, that was the before. Yeah. Ready for the after?
Yep.
Wait, where'd it go?
You got to click the arrow. There you go. Yeah, nice.
It's gone.
Just nothing left.
Here's the before. You see the little kind of arrowhead shape?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Gone.
The field's not even there anymore.
Gone.
So
here's another sprawling set of buildings, apartments, stores. Ready?
Yep.
Gone.
Mm-hmm. Literally crater filled.
No signs of life. But sure, it wasn't a genocide, right?
Nope.
And here's another one. Yes, folks, this is real. I just took this screenshot myself. Pull up Beit Hanoun in Google Maps and see this for yourself. Though it seems that likely Google will end up blurring this image at some point. Ready for this one?
Yep.
Look down there.
Mm-hmm. This is Israeli bulldozers doing shit.
They fucking bulldozed a Star of David road tracked into the town that is completely leveled to nothing. Those probably used to be buildings and houses that are now leveled to the ground.
The last Nazis made you wear that, you know. These Nazis just put it in your field.
That's the main road. The headline of the week comes from Indie Media Award honoree Mondoweiss. And it stopped me in my tracks. And the headline says, quote, I'm looking through the skulls to find my sons. Palestinians dig through Gaza's rubble to search for their missing loved ones. This is a really long article by Tareq Hajjaj. I'm not going to go through it. This is Rafah again, January 23rd, 2024. last year.
Yeah.
It's even worse now.
They've been doing that from the beginning of this conflict.
All right.
So,
here's more. Civil defense teams collect remains and then try to identify them from those remains without any technology, without any power, without.
yeah.
All right, I'm just going to show you some of the pictures. I mean, poor Mondoweiss. Who else is giving you reporting like this?
Mm-hmm.
This is the remains of nearly 50 bodies from under the rubble of homes. Again, 2024, Khan Yunis, early January. This is a year ago. APA images. Again, these are all the stories of the people that are coming home. My sons were bombed in a place I know well, and I went to look for them there, but I don't think their bodies remained throughout the war. Maybe the dogs and cats dragged them to different places. Maybe the Israeli army removed them with bulldozers and tanks. Dozens of scenarios in his head. Can you imagine? You can't even find the remains of your children. Fuck these guys so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica Corbett, another Indie Media Award honoree from Common Dreams, also 2022 honoree for Best Outlet, although they have gone really shit-libby and TDSy lately. This was a good article and I wanted to bring it. They also had a Jake Johnson article about upward mobility, upward wealth transfer of $2 trillion last year. All right, where they got $2 trillion wealthier, the wealthiest. But this one, a pattern of genocide. Of course, we know, but here's another report detailing Israel's systematic destruction of the Gaza health system specifically. And this is also, by the way, what they're doing, what they did in Lebanon, and what they're probably now going to do in Syria, which is attack all the healthcare workers and the doctors so they can't help the sick. And the entire country ends up breaking down into squalor. So this is a new report from, called The Systematic Destruction of Gaza's Healthcare System, a Pattern of Genocide. Builds on previous publications, including from UN entities and testimonies from medical professionals who've worked in Gaza since Israel launched October 7th, in the wake of October 7th, their retaliation, quote unquote. No, it's their massacre that they used October 7th as an excuse for 16 months to kill women and children every day and drop U.S. bombs. All right. Just disgraceful. The report argues that Israel's systematic campaign against Gaza's healthcare infrastructure as a whole is exemplified by the targeted destruction of Al-Shifa Hospital, which is the largest hospital in the occupied Palestinian territory and, quote, older than Israel itself. It also addresses all the other hospital attacks that happened, as well as on healthcare workers, ambulances, aid relief workers, and on the aid trucks that were coming in that had medical supplies. The fact that there was no anesthesia left to operate, that certain people were left to operate on their children without anesthesia, should never be forgotten and allowed to be forgiven, ever. Continuing Israel's theme of war crimes, ongoing war crimes, we also have an update from Eva Bartlett on Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, and it's not a good one, unfortunately. It's not, thankfully, it's not the worst news yet, but, this was the other day on January 24th. She wrote an article for RT on Gaza's beloved Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, abducted by the Israeli army in late December. People around the world are rightly very concerned about his well-being and that he not be tortured to death by the Israeli army, as they've already done to 3 Palestinian doctors from Gaza last year. Now, we covered this a couple weeks ago. All the medical professionals from around the world that were holding up the hashtag free Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya.
Yep.
He, last we heard, was transferred to the worst prison there and was potentially being tortured. But we heard that from third hand from someone who was also a prisoner there, maybe, but also through Israel. So I don't know what I believe when it comes to that. But I wanted to give a shout out to Eva, who is keeping this alive. And I wanted to follow up that he is still missing. And they have ruled him as basically disappeared until at least February 15th and not even allowed to speak to counsel for refusing to leave the hospital when the IDF ordered him to. And refusing to leave his patients. Eva, by the way, is an Indie Media Award honoree inaugural class. I want to bring another one, Ricky Hale, over at Council State Media, 2024 honoree for Best Outlet. One of them. All right. Gaza's double standards show everything we were told about Western democracy is and was a lie. We are seeing a massive effort to suppress the truth and quell dissent. Like we just saw in Switzerland even. It's not even stretching, it's even extending beyond the U.S. and Great Britain and Israel, where they're trying to put a lid on it. Everywhere else around the world, they know the truth. And that's why they've all come to the UN and raised their hands to stop the genocide and call it a genocide and tell Israel to stop. What Ricky says is if you want to know how institutional racism works, consider that Harvard Medical School canceled a class in which its students would have met with patients from Gaza. The excuse was given that the meeting would have been biased towards the victims of genocide because it would have been one-sided.
God forbid we're biased towards the victims of genocide. God forbid.
Well, if they were Jewish, it would have. Now, here's the thing. In order to not be one-sided, the class would have had to let Israelis explain why they really wanted to maim those Palestinians. Instead, Harvard decided it was best for its students to simply not learn about wartime healthcare. They just had to accept being less educated to avoid upsetting Zionists. In an email from medical school dean George O. Daly, class of 82, read, quote, "We are committed to exploring the most educationally rigorous means to teach and learn about the impact of war on the delivery of health care and on the health of affected populations, and to do so in a way that does not divide members of our community who hold disparate views." Huh? After the class was canceled, ready for this, the organizers planned to host the event as a student group, but they weren't allowed to do that either. What? Yeah. Just imagine telling a student group they weren't allowed to meet with Israeli patients. It would never happen, and anyone who suggested it would probably be fired. Given that Harvard admitted the reason for dropping the class was to avoid polarizing the school's affiliates, I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest they have Zionist backers, like Bill Ackman.
Yep.
They probably own shares in the arms manufacturers supplying the IDF too. Remember that Jeffrey Epstein gave massive endowments to Harvard as well. Funded tons of science programs there. In case you didn't know, centrism means finding a middle ground between the victims and the perpetrators of a Holocaust. Inclusivity means pretending the concerns of both sides are equally valid, then silencing the victims so no one hears their concerns. That almost sounds like a Laura Kay line, so I'm not going to out Ricky there, but if the problem was the panel had only included Palestinian patients and not Israelis, they could have had a panel that's representative of the casualty rate in this war, quote unquote. That would mean about 1,000 Palestinians for every Israeli. We could let that one Israeli tell us that the other 1,000 panelists deserve to be maimed, and we could call them anti-Semites, and if they disagreed. I mean, that's just how we operate in the West now, I guess. That's how Piers Morgan operates, at least. The Harvard story is just one example of the effort the West is going to in order to suppress awareness of its war crimes in Gaza. Backflips. Over in the UK, things are somehow getting even worse. As we reported earlier, the British state has been smearing anti-genocide protesters, so it has an excuse to shut down their marches. One such example was a protest outside the BBC, which was stopped due to the police's abuse of the Public Order Act. As we said earlier, the protest was planned in response to the BBC's shocking coverage Gaza coverage, which has been repeatedly called out by whistleblowers like Owen Jones. Police approved the protest to take place before Christmas, only to ban it due to non-existent quote-unquote security concerns. Weird. They rescheduled the protest for January 18th, only to backtrack because the synagogue was located, like I said, about a mile away from the march route. The route was then reversed, and the march was delayed to avoid clashing with the Sabbath service, but even that wasn't enough. Police decided the only way to protect the synagogue was to stop protesters going near the BBC?
Yes.
Okay.
Can't have that.
Police cordoned off the road so protesters went as far as they were allowed to go, and in a shocking act of terrorism, they laid flowers, like I said, among them Jeremy Corbyn. And, oh, look, there he is right there. Where's Jeremy? Where's Waldo?
Terror. Terrorism. Terrorist.
I should have had this earlier. Police ushered the protesters into Trafalgar Square and kettled them in, then selectively arrested whomever they wanted. Their prize targets were 2 elected members of parliament, John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn again issued the following statement on Twitter, which has been backed up by journalists, eyewitnesses, and camera footage. Quote, I was part of a delegation of speakers. Again, we read this earlier. Metropolitan Police falsely accused him and John McDonnell of breaching the cordon, which they had not, after ushering them through, and they interviewed them under caution. The fear is that they will now use the Public Order Act to ban them from future protests, something they've done to other protesters, which we read from the guy who spoke to WSWS anonymously the other day. The claim was that protesters somehow posed a threat to a synagogue that was more than a mile away. The truth is that police ushered Corbyn and McDonnell through the cordon to set them up. It reminds me of the time Starmer set up Corbyn by helping him word a statement and then suspended him for making that statement. British politics is so unbelievably despicable. Jeremy Corbyn, of course, is the former leader of the opposition, and in 2017, he came within 2,000 votes of becoming prime minister. If he had won, we would not have spent the past 15 months supporting genocide. I don't think he would have been prime minister this long from 2017 to 2022 or 2024, but okay. The establishment is trying to punish Corbyn for being on the right side of history, just like he was all those years ago when he spoke so powerfully against the invasion of Iraq. If the British establishment hates one thing more than anything else, it's peacemakers that call out their lying and their warmongering. It's worth mentioning the protest ban was opposed by more than 1,000 Jews, including rabbis, but clearly they were the wrong kind of Jews and should be ignored. Again, very Laura-esque. I feel like she had a hand in writing this. Pathetically, the Met argued in a statement that they act without fear or favor, as though they're boldly standing up for the little guy against the powerful when they're doing the exact opposite. Ask yourself, the last time police rounded up Zionists for cheering on Israeli war crimes. Because that happens. You would think, given that we're a bastion of free speech and democratic values, the British press would be outraged by this blatant attack on our freedoms. Instead, they've been cheering it on.
You think so?
Because everything we've been told about Western democracy is a lie. What a shock. Police have been abusing the Public Order Act to ban people from attending future marches because the most important thing during a genocide is that you'd stop people speaking out against it, right? Well, if you're the U.S. government, if you're the British government, the government's strategy is to quell all dissent because despite its best propaganda efforts, it has failed to win over the public. Disturbingly, police are now arresting the anti-genocide candidates who stood against Labour at the last election. This also follows a spate of arrests of anti-genocide journalists, and if you're still struggling to understand why our freedom-loving democracy would act in such an authoritarian manner, this might help. And again, talking about the Ministry of Defense meeting with the Israeli guy, Declassified UK confronted the soldiers, got that whole John McAvoy thing in it there that we talked about earlier. If we had a functioning press in the UK, they would ask the questions that Alex Morris asked, But the reality is that if any journalist did, they'd be fired. While it would be fine to speak to, say, a Russian general in this way, you simply aren't allowed to speak to an Israeli this way. You're supposed to show them deference. There's now every chance that Alex Morris will be harassed by British police for doing journalism. I would not at all be surprised if his home is raided in the near future, because that's just where we are. It's fucking terrifying. And I hope that doesn't happen. But support Ricky, support Council of State Media. Love these guys. Give them a shout out, big shout out. They do great work. All right. They have the anti-imperialist nexus. Their podcast, Socialist Voices, reads the articles right there. Normal Island News is part of Council of State Media. You know, I adore Laura Kay. She's one of my favorites also. Yeah, awesome people. Awesome outlet. Big fan. Another awesome outlet that I'm a big fan of is this one, Indie News Network, INN, of course. Well, I'm co-founder, so I would be. But all these people are fans too, so thank you so much. That's our wall of fame. They're our supporters.
Thank you all.
Thank you to Sean, again, third night in a row, stepping up, helping us out. All right, $20.
Appreciate you for wasting all your money on us.
On the co-fees,
Yeah.
supporting the media you want to see, which is what that banner says. We're already up to 10% of our $2,000 goal. We'd like to raise $2,000 to pay off all of our expenses for the year. Then we can start to do fun stuff like send Jesse Jet to the Third Eye Carnival and maybe some stuff on the ground. Big Mad Crab likes to go to D.C. and to New York City to do stuff. We can certainly hang out and do that stuff. So,
Can keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? And now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. No, why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen? What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? God, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause now that I can see the cause so clearly. See, I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me.